Hello there everybody, Martin here from Affinity for Commander. Today we have a gameplay video that I've been sat on since 2021, so without further ado, let's take a look at those opening hands. I am playing my Gishath Sun's Avatar Dinosaur Tribal deck, and keep an opening hand of Boros Charm, Selesnya Signet, Herald's Horn, Colossal Dreadmaw, Jungle Shrine, Myriad Landscape, and a Mountain.
Thomas is playing his Maralen of the Mornsong combo deck, keeping a starting hand of Dark Ritual and 4 Swamps. Oh, okay.
Phil is playing his Jace Vryn's Prodigy Mill deck, and keeps a hand consisting of Teferi's Tutelage, Wipe Away, Traumatize, Academy Ruins, and 3 Islands.
And finally, Tom is playing his The First Sliver Tribal deck. He keeps an opening hand containing Hibernation Sliver, Moonglove Changeling, Kodama's Reach, Cascading Cataracts, Cinderglade, Command Tower, and Shivan Reef. Thomas wins the die roll, plays a swamp, and passes to Martin.
In my turn I play Jungle Shrine and pass.
Phil plays an island and ends his turn.
Tom plays a tapped Cinderglade and passes to Thomas.
Thomas starts his turn by playing a swamp and casts Dark Ritual. Next he uses the mana he just created to cast his commander, Maralen of the Mornsong. Not yet finished, Thomas casts Phyrexian Walker and passes the turn.
Instead of drawing, I lose 3 life and search my library for a card thanks to Maralen's ability. I put the card into my hand, cast Sol Ring, and play a Mountain. Next I use my remaining mana to cast Herald's Horn, naming Dinosaur, and end my turn.
Phil loses 3 life, chooses for a card from his library, and also casts Sol Ring. He then plays an island and casts Sphinx's Tutelage before passing to Tom.
Tom loses 3 life and puts a card from his library into his hand. Next he plays Command Tower and casts Abrupt Decay, targeting Thomas's commander.
Ha!
The elf is destroyed and Tom passes the turn.
Thomas plays a swamp and ends his turn.
How suspicious. I begin my turn by revealing the top card of my library to be Kinjali's Sunwing and put the dinosaur into my hand before drawing for turn. I then cast Selesnya Signet and play Myriad Landscape as my land for turn. Not yet finished, I cast the Sunwing that I revealed earlier and pass to Phil.
Phil draws and has only Thomas mill 2 cards with enchantment. Next he plays Urza's Saga, putting a lore counter on the land and casts his commander, Jace Vryn's Prodigy. The future Planeswalker enters the battlefield tapped thanks to Martin's Dinosaur, and Phil uses his remaining mana to cast Teferi's Tutelage.
So much education occurring right here.
Phil draws and discards, targeting Thomas with both of his enchantment's triggers. Thomas mills 4 cards in this way, and Phil passes the turn.
Tom begins his turn by playing Unclaimed Territory, naming Sliver as he does so. Next he casts Kodama's Reach, searching his library for a plains and a swamp. He puts the former into play tapped, the latter into his hand, and ends his turn.
Thomas plays a swamp and passes to Martin.
Looks like somebody really needed their commander to be out. I choose not to reveal the top card of my library, drawing it as normal, and play a Mountain. Next I tap out to cast my commander, Gishath Sun's Avatar, and Phil responds by casting Force of Will. He pays 1 life and exiles a blue card from his hand rather than paying the counterspell's mana cost, and I then move to combat. Here I seek revenge on Phil, attacking him with Kinjali's Sunwing, and unable to block he takes 2 damage. Deeply saddened by my lack of commander, I pass the turn.
Phil draws, once again milling Thomas for 4 with his pair of Tutelages. Next he puts a lore counter on Urza's Saga, plays an island, and ends his turn without casting anything.
Ugh, typical blue player.
I find that offensive.
Tom plays a swamp and casts his commander, the First Sliver. He casts Birds of Paradise with the First Sliver's Cascade ability, and with nothing else to do, passes to Thomas.
In his turn, Thomas plays a swamp and casts Scroll Rack. He activates the Rack's ability, exiling 2 cards from his hand, drawing 2 new ones, and putting the exiled cards on top of his library. With 2 mana still available, Thomas passes the turn.
I start my turn by not revealing the top card of my library and play Evolving Wilds. Next I cast everybody's favourite dinosaur, Colossal Dreadmaw, and move to combat. Here I once again attack Phil with my Flappy Dino, dealing him 2 damage and move to my second main phase. I sacrifice my Evolving Wilds in order to put a forest into play from my library and end my turn, to which Phil responds by casting Archmage's Charm. He chooses to draw 2 cards in this way, milling Thomas for 10 thanks to Sphinx's tutelage finally hitting 2 non-land cards from the same colour, and creates a construct token with Urza's Saga. Still not finished, he activates Jace's ability, drawing, discarding, and forcing Thomas to mill another 4 cards. With no further interruptions, Phil proceeds to his turn.
Phil draws, mills Thomas for 4, and taps his enchantment land to float a colourless mana. Next he puts a lore counter on the aforementioned land, puts Mana Crypt onto the battlefield from his library with its ability, and sacrifices the Saga. Not yet finished, Phil casts Graft Digger's Cage, completely hosing Gishath's ability and making Martin a very sad panda.
Wah.
Still not done, Phil plays an island as his land for turn and casts Mind Stone. With plenty of lands still untapped for instant speed shenanigans, he passes to Tom.
Tom plays Shivan Reef and casts Moon Glove Changeling. He casts Diabolic Intent off the creature's Cascade ability, given that it is technically a Sliver, and floats a black mana with his Birds of Paradise before sacrificing it to the tutor. Tom searches his library for a card, puts it into his hand, and casts Hibernation Sliver. He cascades again, this time hitting Swords to Plowshares, and casts a removal spell targeting Jace. Not liking the sound of this, Phil responds by activating his commander's ability. He draws and discards a card, milling Thomas for 4 as he does so, and transforms his creature into Jace, Telepath Unbound. Swords to Plowshares fizzles without a legal target, and Tom continues his turn by casting Cloud Shredder Sliver.
Such a shame his creatures enter tapped.
I know, right? Tom once again cascades, this time finding Expedition Map. He casts the artifact without paying its mana cost, and moves to combat. Here Tom attacks Jace with the first Sliver, reducing his loyalty to 0, and sending him back to the command zone before Phil even has a chance to use his abilities.
Shame.
Happy with how his turn has gone, Tom passes.
Thomas begins his turn by activating his scroll rack, drawing 3, and putting his old hand on top of his library. Next he plays a swamp and taps out to recast his commander. Phil responds this by sacrificing his Mind Stone to draw a card, milling Thomas for 4.
His library is looking a little bit thin after that.
With nothing more to do, Thomas ends his turn.
I take 3 damage and put a card from my library into my hand instead of drawing. Next I cast Miari's Wake, closely followed by Hull Breach. I destroy Grafdigger's Cage in this way, ignoring Thomas's pleas to deal with the tutelages, and move to combat. Here I attack Tom with my Dreadmaw, dealing him 7 damage, and pass to Phil.
In his turn, Phil takes 0 damage from his Mana Crypt, then loses 3 life and searches his library. He puts a card into his hand, casts Surge for Azcanta, and plays Academy Ruins before passing the turn.
Tom loses 3 life, finds a card in his library and puts it into his hand. Next he plays an island and casts Sliver Legion. Tom cascades into Cryptolith Rite, casts the enchantment and moves to combat. Here he attacks me with Hibernation Sliver and Moonglove Changeling, and Phil with the first Sliver. I block the fake Sliver coming at me with my Sunwing, and damage then occurs. I take 6, Phil takes 11, and Tom ends his turn.
Thomas starts his turn by losing 3 life and shooting for a card from his library with his own commander's ability. He then taps 5 out of his 6 lands to cast Ad Nauseam, which nobody responds to. Thomas repeats the Ad Nauseam process a lot of times, only stopping once he has lost 31 life to the spell. He then casts Lotus Petal, casts Soul Ring, casts Deepwood Legate, which he casts for 0 mana thanks to their ability, and sacrifices Lotus Petal to generate a black mana. Thomas casts Sacrifice, sacrificing Deepwood Legate to add 4 black mana to his mana pool. He then casts a very pretty Duress, targeting Tom with the sorcery, and Tom responds by casting Anguished Unmaking. He targets Thomas's scroll rack with the removal spell, and Thomas responds by activating the artifact's ability. He swaps 11 cards from his hand for the 11 cards that make up the last of his library, and Anguished Unmaking then resolves. Tom loses 3 life, the rack is exiled, and Tom reveals his hand. Thomas is unable to make him discard given that he has no non-creature, non-land cards, and the stack empties at last. Not ready to end his turn quite yet, Thomas casts Cabal Ritual, adding another 5 black mana to his pool, given that he definitely has 7 or more cards in his graveyard, thanks to Phil. Next he casts Unmask, exiling a card from his hand rather than paying its mana cost. Thomas targets himself with the spell, discarding Phantasmagorian in this way, and casts Memnite. Still not finished, he casts Soldevi what are all these card names? Still not finished, he casts Soldevi Adnate and activates Phantasmagorian's ability. Thomas discards 3 cards to return the difficult to pronounce creature to his hand and sacrifices 3 creatures to flashback Dread Return. He puts Scourge Familiar onto the battlefield in this way and discards 25 cards to generate 25 black mana with the Imp's ability. With only 2 cards left in hand, Thomas uses the majority of his floating mana to cast Torment of Hailfire, where X is 25. Phil responds to this by casting Cyclonic Rift, bouncing Colossal Dreadmaw to Martin's hand. And with no further interactions, Martin, Phil, and Tom all succumb to Nicol Bolas's might. Done so in the single most confusing and convoluted way I have ever seen.
Well, that is it for another game. I hope that you enjoyed watching Thomas demonstrate why everybody hates combo players in Commander. I'd like to give a huge thank you to each and every one of our incredible patrons, without whom we'd be unable to continue making content such as this, so thank you. Also, be sure to check out our affiliate links in the video description. It won't cost you anything extra to purchase your items through these, but it really helps out the channel. And finally, don't forget that you can help to support us in 4 quick and easy ways: liking this video, subscribing, hitting that bell icon, and leaving us a comment. I read every one. That's it for now though, we'll see you next time. Stay awesome!